Donald Trump's back in the White House after he was discharged from hospital where he'd spent nearly 3 days since testing positive for COVID-19.
I learned so much about coronavirus, and one thing that's for certain, don't let it dominate you. Don't be afraid of it. I didn't feel so good. And 2 days ago, I could have left 2 days ago. 2 days ago, I felt great. We're going back to work. We're going to be out front. As your leader, I had to do that. And I know there's a risk, there's a danger, but that's okay. And now I'm better, and maybe I'm immune, I don't know. But don't let it dominate your lives. Get out there, be careful. We have the best medicines in the world.
Well, those comments infuriated many medical experts who said it downplayed the deadly threat of the virus. Trump made the statement a few hours after leaving hospital then. Following his release, the presidential helicopter touched down in Washington with the US leader going to the White House balcony, as you can see for yourself, removing his mask to pose for photos. Meantime, the American people are, of course, still really badly affected by all this. The Northeast is seeing another big spike in COVID cases. New York City is already set to close schools in several neighborhoods getting hard hit by the virus. The new restrictions come into force Tuesday.
My number one concern has always been schools. I would not send my child to a school in a hotspot cluster that has not been tested. We're going to close the schools in those areas tomorrow.
The US as a whole remains the world's top hotspot for the pandemic. On Friday, new infections hit a 2-month record with over 54,000 positive cases. That's then the highest daily tally since the middle of August, when the country recorded just over 64,000 cases. We heard from people in New York about the decision now to close schools today.
Why was Kew Garden Hills closed down? There's no grade uptick there. Why was my son's school, which is actually a dormitory where they're allowed to be, why was it closed down?
It's for the safety of the students at the end of the day, that they're fully shutting it down or making it remote. But it's somewhat discouraging at the same time. But whatever needs to be done, they're doing it. You know, this school in particular, they're doing it.
Our correspondent Caleb Mopin looks into why New York is again facing a viral spike.
The rate of infection in New York City is rising once again. It's the highest numbers we've seen since back in May. So who is to blame for this? Well, New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo says the buck stops with local officials.
The state can't take over effective enforcement for every jurisdiction. If a local jurisdiction cannot or will not perform effective enforcement of violating entities, notify the state, and we will close all business activity in hotspots where local government can't do compliance.
Now, Cuomo's words have led to allegations of hypocrisy. He's criticizing local officials for not doing what he has recommended. Well, back earlier during the pandemic, he was criticized for not doing what federal officials recommended.
I don't believe that any federal administration could be serious about physical lockdowns of states or parts of states across this country. I don't believe it's legal. I think it would be economic chaos.
The decision around nursing homes, with Governor Cuomo decreeing that COVID-19 patients should be sent there, had a pretty big impact. Many have not forgotten what they see as a pretty big misjudgment that cost many lives.
There is something disgusting that Democrats are doing, that Joe Biden does, and that you do, which is you try to blame the people who've lost their lives on your political enemies. Was it a mistake when your brother implemented a policy that nursing homes had to accept COVID-positive patients and endanger the lives of tens of thousands of seniors in New York State?
My brother was the first one to say that there was a learning.
Cuomo has also faced criticism for allowing Black Lives Matter protests to take place, despite talking up the risks.
We're talking about reopening in 1 week in New York City. And now we're seeing these mass gatherings over the past several nights that could, in fact, exacerbate the COVID-19 spread.
Now, despite his policy differences with the White House, New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo sent his best wishes to President Donald Trump when he got COVID-19. That is unlike New York City's mayor, Bill de Blasio, who saw it as an opportunity to take the president to task.
I think it's another reminder of why what some of us have been saying is right. Wear masks, practice social distancing, and take it seriously. This president obviously didn't do it and paid the price.
Party lines, power, and position mean nothing to the coronavirus. Everyone is at risk. Now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo admits the leaders of the state have made some pretty big mistakes along the way. However, he still wants everyone to believe that he is the guy to lead us through the crisis.
Well, Andrew Cuomo is a leading figure within the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party's strategy during this 2020 election has been to run against Trump and to run against COVID. New York has had the worst record in its handling of COVID in the country. I mean, New York has had the worst death rate statistics and the worst rate of the incidence of COVID in the country. Because much of the media in the United States is entirely in cahoots with the Democratic Party, Cuomo hasn't suffered any adverse consequences from that. So, yes, it's hypocritical, but he can get away with it. So he's going to blame the COVID on Trump and pose as the hero who somehow saved New York at the same time. And the media, unfortunately, allow him to get away with that.